Kentucky basketball needs to make a statement in a big-time victory, and there may not be a better opportunity on their schedule than tomorrow against the Florida Gators.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Florida Gators. There may not be a bigger home opportunity on the schedule this season, maybe outside of Tennessee in terms of quality of victory on the table. This one's going to be really, really big for the Wildcats. Going to be breaking down what we know about the Gators, kind of how things could play out matchup-wise. 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern tip. Super early in the day, a big day of college basketball. Going to be breaking that down. Caleb Wilson, thoughts as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you were listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Without further ado, Kentucky versus Florida. What do we know about the Gators and the Wildcats? Well, Florida right now is 13-0. They are number 6 in the nation on KenPom. This is a really, really good team that has played very, very well to start the season. They have not had the most difficult time schedule-wise. If you want to go look, they're 227th on KenPom in terms of strength of schedule. But their head coach, Todd Golden, who has been there for what's going on, 3 seasons now, he has just been really, really good this season. He has got this team firing on all cylinders. First year he was there, they were 16-17. Last year, they were 24-12. They're already 13-0. This year, it's a record of 51-29. This team, I think, is going to do really, really big things here in the SEC this season. And it's because of the fact that they're one of the most balanced teams in the nation. This team does not have a ton of major weaknesses. It's one of the big reasons why they're off to their 13-0 start. Also, by the way, one of 3 SEC teams that are 13-0. You've got Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Florida, who have started off their season through their non-con slate undefeated, which is just absolutely insane to think about. But they're one of the most balanced teams in the country. Go look at KenPom, Evan Mia, Torvik. Go look in an analytics site and see just how good both their offensive efficiency and their defensive efficiency have been so far this season. They play with a lot of tempo on offense. They're top 10 there on KenPom. If you want to look on defense, 16th nationally there. They are phenomenal, effective field goal percentage defense as a whole. They do a really good job of stopping you from 2 and from 3. Opponents have kind of struggled for the most part to really get any sort of points from beyond the arc, which is going to be a crucial talking point here whenever we get to keys. But they've got some major physicality down low. If you want to go look at that Florida State game early in the season, they really caught fire early in that first half because of the fact that they were able to grab rebounds, get out and run, and they were able to hit some threes in transition. But it starts with the physicality in the paint. It starts with what you're doing rebounding the basketball. Florida is second in the country in offensive rebound percentage. That is only behind Texas A&M, who Kentucky has the pleasure of playing this season as well. The 3 best players on this team, they are hard to pick out. If you want to just look at scoring, you can find an answer, but I don't know if it's objectively the answer. Your top 3 scorers on a team that averages over 87 points per game are Walter Clayton Jr., Elijah Martin, and Will Richard. Clayton, a former, I believe, Iona Gale. Elijah, previously at FAU. All of these guys are averaging at least 14.2 points per game. Clayton leading the way with 17.2, Elijah with 15, and Will Richard with 14.2. All of them statistically don't have any major flaws. Elijah is only shooting 32.6% from three, but he makes up for that by shooting very well at the line and grabbing almost 2 steals per game. This trio of guards is about as good as you'll see in the entire country this season. Alex Condon, I would argue you could swap him out for either Richard or Martin if you were going to pick the top 3 best players on this team. It's the big man down low who's averaging 11 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, almost 2 assists, 1.5 blocks. He leads the team there in blocks, a team that averages almost 5.5 a game. He shoots well from the floor. He is shooting, 47.1% from three. I don't think that was a part of his game a season ago. I think that's something that he has just developed. But, man, this is a team with tempo, with balance, with physicality. They have everything that you would want out of a national championship contender. I mean, there's no other way to really put it. The tempo has really helped them, and I think it's a major talking point in this game. They're not crazy efficient shooting, but they get up shots. This is something that Kentucky has tried to do so far this season. In their 4 games against top 100 KenPom teams, Florida State, Wake Forest, Arizona State, and North Carolina, Florida has made at least 10 threes in all but 1 game. They made 8 against Wake Forest. They never shot better than 35.7% in any of those contests. So what does that tell you? The team likes to get up and down the floor. They like to take threes. They like to get as much up as possible. And if they don't have a phenomenal percentage, that's okay. Kentucky does a similar thing. So what are the keys to this game? What are some of the big-time matchups? Well, I think Kentucky has to finish at the rim with consistency. And this goes for all of the players on Kentucky's roster. There's not an individual matchup here that I think I like. I want to see Lamont Butler and Otega Dawe finish a little bit better than they did against Ohio State. But Florida has 3 different guys that they can throw down there at center. They've got 3 different guys that weigh at least 230 pounds or more. So this is not your mid-major. This is not a no-name team that has a bunch of different lightweight guys down low. They are serious. Thomas Haw and Sam Alexis and Alex Condon are all very, very, very good. You're going to see Florida try and impose their will at the rim on both ends. You have to be able to punch back a little bit. If you're Carr, if you're Amari Williams, if you're Brandon Garrison, this is a major Amari Williams, can you get it done game. You have to be able to finish at the rim with consistency, and then you also have to be able to simply be more aggressive. That's another takeaway here. Like I'm mentioning, you have to match them energy-wise at the rim. You have to match them energy-wise rebounding the ball on both ends of the floor, specifically getting those defensive rebounds if you're Kentucky, and you have to be able to match their energy or maybe outplay them in transition. Both ways, getting back and getting forward, right? This is a game where you just have to wake up early in a very early tip and go out there and execute very well. Jackson Robinson is a major X factor on both offense and defense. He's going to be guarding one of the 3 guys there. Lamont Butler, I don't have any major concerns with him. I have some concerns with Dawe guarding this trio of backcourt players. You cannot get blown by in this game, whether it's isolation, whether it's off of ball screens. You have to be committed on defense. A lot of this game, I think, comes down to want to and energy on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, 41.3% from 3 or better would get me to my market down prediction that I had earlier this week, where I said Kentucky would shoot at least an average of 38.5% from 3 this week. But you really just need to have an above average game from 3, something that Kentucky has struggled to come by. Last outing against a big-time opponent, Rupp with Louisville, Kentucky shot well from 3. They hit a bunch of shots there. But you need to see more. So simply be more aggressive. Finish at the rim with consistency, have an above-average game from 3. Robinson needs to be a major X factor on both sides of the ball. Ball screen defense will be crucial. Don't get blown by. Just bring your A game. Just bring it. Play a good game all around overall against a really, really good team. All right, that is my prediction, or excuse me, that is my keys to the game. That's our preview of Kentucky versus Florida. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Kentucky wins this game? Do you think Florida wins this game? How much of a deal is Rupp Arena on the road? It's hard to win on the road in the SEC. We'll talk about that later on in the show. All right, Caleb Wilson. Kentucky's waiting on him. What's happening there? Not a whole lot, but we're going to speculate here a little bit here on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to pick up a dub. I love betting on players that could score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, yardage totals for individual players. It's been super, super fun. You can just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to have a chance at $250 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Wrong hotkey. I was going to try and pause for water without just having you sit here and watch me drink it. Alas, we messed up. We move along. Apparently, Kentucky basketball is just waiting on Caleb Wilson to make an announcement. He said, according to Joe Tipton of On3, that he would be making a decision between late December and early January. To quote him directly, January for sure. So here we are, 3 days into January as I'm recording this. Obviously, you don't expect an announcement like as soon as possible, but you're starting to wonder what exactly is going on behind the scenes in his recruitment. According to certain reports, this has become a competitive race. North Carolina has apparently snuck in, has continued to recruit, and they're one of his final 5 teams, and they have made things competitive here towards the end. I will sit here and tell you, as of today, and you and I, we haven't read anything that could tell us otherwise, I still expect him to commit to Kentucky. I would be surprised if he ended up going to North Carolina after all this time. It has not tracked that way. When you think about, how Kentucky's other pieces have communicated with this guy, we talked recently about Caden Lewis, about how he has obviously really wanted him to come and play with UK. Jasper Johnson has said as much on Twitter as well. Malachi Marino has said it as well in different interviews. I mean, every single player in this recruiting class has been adamant that they want him to come play at Kentucky. I expect him to come. I expect him to want to play with these guys. That is just what that's my speculation. That's my assumption. We'll see what happens. Nothing's really being said at all right now in terms of reporting, in terms of things that you could get behind a paywall. There's just not a whole lot being said other than, hey, this is a 2-man race between Kentucky and North Carolina. Again, I still expect him to go to Kentucky. And even if he doesn't, you still need pieces to surround the 3 freshmen that you have, regardless of what Wilson does. And really what I wanted to look at here, talking about Caleb Wilson, because I think he could be such an instrumental piece on your roster next season, you need to look at what's going on around you in terms of roster construction. So let's talk about this for a little bit. This would be your 10-man rotation, theoretically, if Caleb Wilson committed next year. Your starting point guard would more than likely be a Caden Lewis. I don't think that Travis Perry would get the nod at point. I just don't. I think Jasper Johnson would start at shooting guard, the 5-star southpaw there. I think Travis Perry would back up the 1. I think Colin Chandler would back up the 2, which I don't know how fired up you are about that. We'll talk about that in a second. Otega Owe would be your starting 3 as the senior. Trent Noah would be your backup small forward, which really I'm not mad at all. I'm really not mad at. I think he needs to be in the rotation next season. Caleb Wilson would arguably be your best defensive player on the floor at power forward, 5-star. He would be your most valuable player, I think, in your front court you would have to go and find somebody in the transfer portal behind him, because right now there's not anybody on the roster that could come back and be a 4 for Kentucky. At the 5, Brandon Garrison, I think, would start over Malachi Marino. So you've got a top to bottom in terms of starters. You've got freshman, senior, freshman, junior. And then your rotational pieces, sophomore, transfer portal edition, freshman. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad, but it's not phenomenal. And then you look at the possible additions. And I wrote this down, and I'm going to go through these in terms of like priority in my mind. Again, you have to have a power forward. You literally can't enter the season without a guy that you can put behind Wilson at the 4. You need to preferably have somebody that's kind of like a stretch 4, versatile tweener guy who can complement Wilson's defense. If Andrew Carr was coming back for an extra season, he would be absolutely perfect here, I think. Unfortunately, he is not, because he is graduating. Power forward is your biggest priority. A piece that rounds out the backcourt is second here in terms of transfer portal priority. You've got 2 great scorers, I should say, in Lewis and Johnson. I'm unsure about Colin Chandler and how much he would be impactful just based on the way that we've seen him play so far. I don't think that's a bad thing to say. And then the third most important thing would be a backup wing. More fluid shooter than Ortega, somebody that can handle a little bit more volume, can handle the ball a little bit as well. Somebody that would be not necessarily a volume guy, but somebody that can contribute. And I don't know if there's going to be anybody on next year's roster that will be as effective as a contributor as geez. So Caleb, when you look at it and you see kind of like how this roster could be constructed, defensively, I have some major concerns, and Wilson would be a huge, huge answer in the front court at least. Yeah, I think you need him. You have to lock this kid down. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Does Kentucky get him? I certainly think they do. All right. We've got some insane games this weekend in the SEC. I took a bunch of notes on all of them. I'm going to give you my predictions for all of them because I think you should pay attention, because every single team in this conference is at least 10-3 or better. Almost half of them are 12-1 or better. Let's learn together, you and I. And I'm going to blitz through this here in a little bit. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends at Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice, like me. I have certainly benefited from them. There was a specific product that I was using for work, actually, that I didn't even realize that I was paying for, and Rocket Money pointed it out to me, and it made it super easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal financial assistant, and they have been great. I mean, excellent for me. They're a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $5 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 when using all of the app's premium features. You can cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I once again hit the wrong hotkey, but nevertheless, we move on. I am currently under the weather. It's part of it. We rock. I think my mind is just simply a little hazy, but we've got a gauntlet. I mean, we've just got an insane gauntlet of games this weekend, and I'm going to predict all of them. I've got a lot of notes here, so I'm going to try and rapid fire through this. My camera is about to die if you're watching on YouTube, so here we go. Florida, 13-0 at Kentucky, 11-2. We already previewed this game. I'm going to give you my prediction. I think the Cats win by 6. That's my thought after all of what I said earlier. I think it's going to be really important that the fact that this is on the road in Rupp Arena, and frankly, Florida has not played a opponent of Kentucky's caliber yet. Now, do I think this is a bad matchup? In a sense, yes. I think that the fact that Florida is able to be so physical across the board with several pieces down low, on top of the fact that they have just one of the best three-headed backcourts in college basketball, period, one of the best I've ever seen, it's a bad matchup. Jax is huge, absolutely massive in this game. If he does not play well, I think Kentucky, on the defensive end of the floor, I think Kentucky loses by a wide margin. If he does play well, I think it's competitive. If Kentucky shoots well, I think they win. And I am banking on that. Georgia 12-1 at Ole Miss 11-2. Both these teams are inside the top 50 on KenPom, top 40 in the net. KenPom has Ole Miss winning this game 75-71. Georgia has been considerably better than I expected underneath Mike White, but will need to make a little bit of noise in the SEC to make the NCAA tournament. Picking up a game like this one on the road would be a massive start. This is a quad one game for both opponents. Freshman forward Asa Newell for Georgia leads the team in scoring and has played very, very well down low alongside fellow freshman Somto Cyril, who Kentucky fans know well. We've talked about him quite a bit here on the podcast as a potential pickup. Ole Miss has 2 quad one wins over BYU and Louisville, barely lost to Purdue, frankly should have won that game, and was blown out by Memphis. They create havoc on defense, but give up sub-average shooting percentages relative to SEC competition. Virginia Tech transfer Sean Badula leads the Rebels in scoring. He was somebody that Kentucky looked at this offseason. The team as a whole averages over 80 a game. Both these teams actually do. Jalen Murray and Padula are shooting both 41 and 44% from three. Very good backcourt. Both these teams are pretty balanced, with Georgia having better defense than offense and Ole Miss having better offense than defense. Georgia happens to be one of the tallest teams in the nation, but their biggest weakness is turnovers, and it's one of Ole Miss's greatest strengths is creating turnovers. I think that decides this game, essentially. The fact that this is on the road in Oxford, and I like the score that KenPom has set, maybe a touch higher, maybe a couple points higher. Arkansas 11-2 at Tennessee 13-0. Both these teams are currently a little bit better than we probably give them credit for, but the Vols are on another level. Arkansas is 39th in KP and 41st in the net. UT 4th in KP and 2nd in the net. Kentucky's transfers have been massive for the Razorbacks so far, with the Arrow really turning things up, scoring almost 18 a game, 2 steals per contest, and yet some of you dogged him because he was a 3-star recruit at Kentucky. Some of you really wanted him to stay. Obviously, he would have been phenomenal, I think, for this team this year. Freshman Boogie Fland has been an amazing addition at point guard. He was the only player in Kentucky's recruiting class that I was really fired up about because this kid is such a great scorer, such a good distributor. And he, I think, leads all freshmen in the nation in assist-to-turnover ratio. But he, DJ Wagner, and Zvonimir Ivasic are all shooting 40+% from three. That's right, you heard me. DJ Wagner actually shooting well from three. I don't know if it's just shot selection. I don't know if it's form. I don't know what he's done to improve it, but he has, and I'm happy for him. Numbers-wise, this looks like an old Calipari team, relatively young, short bench, attacks the rim, scores most of their points there. Better on the defensive end because of Link, Janelle Davis, FAU transfer, and Jodas Adu. UT transfer were supposed to be bigger contributors, but they've not been yet. Chaz Lanier has been phenomenal for the Vols, scoring almost 20 a game, shooting 46% from three. What could have been for Kentucky. Zakai Ziegler is still here, and Jordan Gainey has made strides as a really solid 2 option. Not the best outside shooting team and really weird point distribution overall, but they're still good, and their defense has been absolutely insane. Didn't even talk about it. It's their team. KenPom expects Tennessee to win this game by 12. I'd make the margin a little closer, just because Cal gets up for some of these big games. South Carolina 10-3 at Mississippi State 12-1. South Carolina is technically the worst team in the SEC at 10-3 and yet still ranks inside the top 65 on KenPom. Beating Clemson in overtime was big for them. Mississippi State, led by Josh Hubbard, is 12-1 and has 3 quad 1 wins. Lost to Butler by 10 in a weird game, but throttled Memphis on the road. Big time win for the Bulldogs. State's defense has taken a little bit of a dip recently in terms of efficiency. They can't guard the three-point line. That shouldn't be a major concern here. Gamecocks don't really have a flamethrower there. Somehow I think KenPom's prediction of Mississippi State by 2 is just a little out of the line. It's hard to win on the road, but I think USC gets very, very close to doing so. Mississippi State by 2. They're actually favored by more than that. I think it's like 6 or 7 points. Missouri at Auburn. Missouri 11-2, Auburn 12-1. This is very simple. Auburn should win this game by 20 because Missouri's defense just isn't very good, and the Tigers have been so battle-tested this season, it's hard to see them cracking at home. Hats off to Dennis Gates for not falling apart yet in year 3. That's a pretty solid team. They beat Kansas. Vanderbilt 12-1 at LSU 11-2. This is probably my second favorite game on the schedule outside of Florida, Kentucky, just because both these teams are going to get up and down the floor on offense. Despite having not played a quad one game yet, Vanderbilt is almost 20 spots above LSU in the net ratings, both inside the top 55. Look, Vanderbilt, they're 12-1. It's crazy. They're pretty solid. On top of that, they've played an insanely weak schedule, but they've played very solidly on offense, and they flat out, again, get up and down the floor. North Texas transfer Jason Edwards, it's just insane. Crazy three-point shooter, great around the rim, makes a lot of circus shots. The team has a ton of experience and a really good new head coach in Mark Byington. LSU has also had brought in a ton of new faces. They're 11-2, dominant at the rim like Vandy has been. They've also played an extremely weak schedule so far. They've lost both their quad one games to SMU and Pitt. LSU's defense has been pretty dang good so far, but they gave up a lot of second chance opportunities, and opponents get a lot of points at the rim. Makes me think Vandy wins this game, but again, it's really hard to win on the road. We'll watch that space. Oklahoma 13-0 at Alabama 11-2. Speaking of, it's hard to win on the road. Oklahoma is 13-0. They've beaten Arizona, Louisville, Providence, and Michigan. Probably shouldn't have beaten Michigan. 4-point played in that game. And yet they've got a really good offense. Freshman Jeremiah Fierce has been amazing. Despite all of this, on top of all of this, they're projected to lose by 9 to Alabama on the road to open up their SEC play. This line probably has a lot to do with the fact that it's in Tuscaloosa. Alabama has taken a bit of a step back this season after making the Final Four last year with a lot of their returning pieces and a ton of experience. 2, it's been a little weird. They're really struggling from 3. They lead the nation in 2-point field goal percentage. Mark Sears is currently a shell of himself analytically. It's bad to watch. Grant Nelson still can't shoot. Aiden Holloway, who transferred over to Auburn, has improved, but not by much. I know Kim Pom thinks highly of Alabama for some reason, but the Tide just haven't had the juice that they've had in the past. If this game were in Norman, I'd swing the other way. But because it's at Bama, the Sooners are due, and the Sooners kind of feel like they're due for a down game, I should say. Maybe KP has gotten this one right. Final game here. Texas 11-2 at Texas A&M 11-2. Woo! Wouldn't this be a fun way to start your conference play? Texas. Both of these teams are currently top 35 in both net and KenPom. A&M has already gotten 3 quad one wins, including Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Purdue. They also have a win over Rutgers, a win over Creighton, who is not as good this year, but that's still a solid victory there. Texas is 11-2. They've played the 5th weakest schedule in the entire country. Losses to Ohio State and UConn showed inconsistencies on offense. This is the second best three-point shooting team in the nation right now. They've protected the rim really well. Trey Johnson, pure scorer, dude. Really, really solid freshman player. This is a really good roster of transfer portal pieces. They are, however, unproven. They've had some close games against competition, and they start out conference play on the road against one of their biggest rivals. Not fun times in Austin. But Texas A&M has pretty much been the same team on paper since Buzz Williams got to College Station. To quote what I wrote down here, the way they play offense makes me want to bang my head into a wall over and over and over again, much like they do. This is one of the least efficient teams in the nation, shooting the rock that has absolutely dominated on the offensive glass. They're first in the nation there. Wade Taylor is insanely overrated because he's extremely inefficient and takes a bunch of shots. Again, this goes back to my argument about efficiency over volume. You need to have both. You can't just have one in order to be a dominant team or even a good team. They brought back essentially everyone from last year. I don't like this team. I just don't like the way that they play. It's annoying. It's frustrating. They will likely beat Texas because, once again, it's hard to win on the road. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram at Is That Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for a huge episode of Locked On Kentucky. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.